Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and talk about a scenario that is literally keeping so many IT directors and business leaders up at night. We're talking about the operational and financial nightmares of do-it-yourself cybersecurity. Today, we're taking a really close look at Boom 365's MSSP Pro tier, but more importantly, we're looking at why this matters so much from a management perspective. As you'll see, a truly managed solution doesn't just slap more software onto your stack, it actually solves the core accountability problems that we're all facing today. Now, this perfectly captures the modern managerial nightmare, right? Most organizations today have just kind of cobbled together this fragmented security stack. You've got a spam filter over here, an antivirus over there, a firewall somewhere else entirely. And because each product only covers its own little slice of the pie, no single console actually sees the whole environment. The coverage gaps, they just hide right in the spaces between these vendors. And honestly, the worst part is when an incident actually happens, every single vendor just points the finger at someone else. You're left paying for 7 tools from 7 vendors, but you have absolutely zero accountability. So we have to ask ourselves this absolutely critical question. Because, the greatest hidden risk to your organization actually isn't a lack of software, it's what Boom Logic calls the monitoring gap. Think about it for a second. If an attacker kicks off a ransomware encryption at 2 a.m. and your software flags it, who is actually awake to see that alert? If your answer is, well, no one until 9 a.m. the next morning, then you've got a massive blind spot. The tools are detecting the threat, sure, but no humans are actually responding to it. And that creates this incredible illusion of security. On paper, when you look at your IT budget, you've got firewalls, you've got antivirus, you've got endpoint protection, the whole shebang. It looks fantastic. But in reality, those tools are just firing alerts into empty dashboards that nobody is actively checking. Having world-class alarms doesn't really help if there's no security guard in the building to actually hear them going off. So, the crucial takeaway here is that detection without response is really just a historical record of what you lost. And for a manager, this translates into a whole series of liabilities. We're talking about ransomware running completely unchecked all night long. We're talking about employee credentials just sitting out there on dark web marketplaces for months simply because scanning for them wasn't anyone's actual job. And operationally, it means your cyber insurance renewals stall out because the underwriters are demanding proof of monitoring and penetration tests, documentation that literally doesn't exist because nobody was ever tasked with producing it. To fix this massive vulnerability, Boom 365 brings in their MSSP Pro tier. MSSP stands for Managed Security Service Provider, by the way. This tier takes all the layers of their comprehensive security bundle and basically puts a live 24/7, 365 security team right on top of it. It completely shifts the heavy burden of monitoring, investigating, and compliance reporting right off your internal team's shoulders. It directly and finally closes that dangerous monitoring gap we were just talking about. 18. Yep. That is the exact number of distinct security capabilities unified under this one single accountable plan. For a manager who's just desperately trying to consolidate vendors and streamline a chaotic budget, this number is a total breath of fresh air. You aren't managing 18 different contracts anymore or trying to juggle 18 different support portals. It is all finally brought together under one roof. Instead of a fragmented mess, the whole thing is consolidated into these 3 comprehensive pillars. First up, you've got your foundational protections: email, identity, and cloud security. This includes things like dark web monitoring and SaaS backups. Second, you have endpoint and device protection. So managing everything from automated patching to ransomware rollback on your laptops and servers. But it's this third pillar that's the real game changer for the Pro tier: active security operations. This gives you a 24/7 security operations center, managed detection and response, and a US-based help desk. But here's how this actually builds a real defense. You aren't just buying software anymore. Look, anyone can go out and buy an antivirus tool. But with MSSP Pro, you are actually hiring a 24/7 human team. For instance, when we talk about MDR, Managed Detection and Response, we're talking about highly trained analysts who actively investigate those alerts, validate if they are real threats, isolate compromised systems, and actually contain the damage on your behalf. Now, for compliance officers, IT directors, and executives out there, this active monitoring brings massive operational relief. Because Boom Logic's team is constantly monitoring and testing your environment, the service inherently generates the exact evidence trails that regulators are always demanding. It includes HIPAA-aligned controls for healthcare, CMMC and NIST alignment for government contractors, and this is huge, 4 penetration tests and vulnerability scans every single year to actually find weaknesses before the attackers do. And honestly, this is exactly why that matters so much when renewal time rolls around. You will never have to scramble for audit paperwork again. When your cyber insurance underwriter asks, hey, who is monitoring your network and where's the proof? Your SOC monitoring logs, your MDR incident records, and your quarterly pen test findings are already packaged up and ready to hand over. It literally turns a stressful weeks-long audit scramble into a simple email attachment. Okay, let's talk budget, because having transparent operational costs is absolutely vital for managers. It is a predictable, all-in monthly rate per user that covers the person, their device, and the entire security operation behind them. And notice how the pricing actively drops as your organization scales up. It goes from $145 per user for those smaller teams all the way down to $115 for enterprise volumes of 200 or more users. There are no hidden fees here, just predictable scaling. Oh, and here's a quick, really surprising fact for any of you managing nonprofit organizations. You can unlock massive savings through a program called NITEP. That's the Nonprofit IT Empowerment Program. Basically, nonprofits can pool their purchasing power together to unlock those enterprise-level volume discounts we literally just looked at. Plus, you get an extra 20% off the Boom 365 MSSP Pro rate on top of that. It is just an incredible way to get enterprise-grade security on a nonprofit budget. When we look at contract terms, there is a very unique structure here that seriously rewards commitment. Your monthly rate per user, that never changes, regardless of the term length you choose. However, your onboarding costs, which typically equal about 1 month of your subscription, those plummet depending on your term. On a standard 1-year agreement, you pay 100% of the onboarding cost. Sign a 2-year term and it's 50% off. But if you commit to a 3-year term, your onboarding costs drop to completely free. Of course, for IT directors, the biggest fear of changing security providers is usually the friction and the downtime, right? But the transition here is handled through this highly contained 3-step process that's specifically designed not to disrupt your daily business. It starts with a clear security assessment to pinpoint your current gaps. Then, Boom Logic handles the coordinated integration of the telemetry straight into their SOC. Finally, you just shift into active operations, where that 24/7 monitoring and those quarterly penetration tests just run like clockwork in the background. And this right here is the ultimate sleep well at night appeal for managers: total accountability. You get the executive summaries, you review the outcomes, you see the risk ratings and remediation guidance from the penetration tests, but you do not have to manage the minute-to-minute alerts. You get to oversee the strategy, while a highly trained team handles the actual tactical warfare happening on your network. Because of this robust, accountable framework, MSSP Pro is purpose-built for what we can call zero-breach industries. If you're in healthcare dealing with HIPAA, finance dealing with the SEC, a government contractor answering to the Department of Defense, or a multi-location business needing consistent coverage everywhere, operational continuity is mandatory for you. A breach is simply not an option, and this service is scaled exactly for that level of rigor. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final critical question to ask yourself and your leadership team. When you look at your IT budget today, are you just paying for isolated security tools that generate noise and point fingers when things go wrong? Or are you paying for documented, human-backed security outcomes? Because the difference between those two things is exactly what separates a managerial nightmare